So what you were just looking at is scriptures showing that the day begins to dawn regarding the Sabbath. And the Sabbath was ordained since creation. That's not a curse. When God took the people out of the land, he gave them the Ten Commandments, right? He said, obey, like, keep my covenant and obey my voice, something like that. And that covenant was the Ten Commandments. And so you're saying that he took them out of the land, or out of Egypt, just to curse them? Like, because you're just twisting Paul's letters to your own destruction, as Peter says, as Peter warns in 2 Peter 3. Right, because the Ten Commandments, that's not part of the Levitical law or anything. It's not part of the sacrificial law. Because if you read Galatians 3, I think you start at the beginning, or maybe it's Galatians 2, it says, like, receive you the Spirit through, the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith. And so then when you go read John 14:15-17 and Acts 5:32, you receive the Spirit through keeping God's commandments. And so there's a difference, right? There's the Ten Commandments. That's how you receive the Spirit. And that's why Yeshua says that. You receive the Spirit through keeping the commandments, right? The Spirit of grace was given through to all people, and it convicts you, teaches you to live godly, to live righteously, right? And you read Deuteronomy 6, verses like 24 and 25. If we observe to do all God's commandments, then it'll be our righteousness, right? To live righteously, to keep his commandments. Simple. And so if you keep the commandments, then you'll receive the Spirit of truth, who the world cannot receive, because it doesn't know God, because they're not keeping the commandments, right? 1 John 2, 3-4. And so then when you continue in Galatians 3, you see like this verse about there's a covenant, and if it's confirmed, then no man adds nor disannuls from it. And right, talk about the covenant with Abraham. And so then you read Psalm 105, and that same covenant is the everlasting covenant that was made to Jacob and Israel. And so then when you read Deuteronomy 4, it's like the first few verses, you see that, like, you're told, don't add, don't take away. Then you read Deuteronomy 5, verse 22, and nothing was added, right? And that's the Ten Commandments. Nothing was added to the Ten Commandments, which includes the Sabbath, by the way, if you didn't know. So, and then you have Galatians 3:19, wherefore serves the law? It was added because of transgression, right? It was added to the covenant, right? The law that was 400 and some years later after the covenant cannot make the covenant, the promise, to none effect, because they transgressed the covenant by making the molten calf. That molten calf, it's transgression of the covenant. And so you can't have, you see that the law was added because of transgression. Well, what was it added to? Because it says it was added. Added to what? It was added to the covenant. The covenant that was already agreed upon, right back at Horeb over there. And then they went over to receive the tables in stone. And so they transgressed the covenant by making the molten calf, and then the sacrificial law was added, right? And so then you have people now, instead of just being able to just keep the Ten Commandments how God desired, right? Because if they kept the Ten Commandments, you see in Exodus 19 that they'd be a peculiar treasure, a holy nation, whatever, right? But they chose to transgress, and so the sacrificial law was added, and so then they had to do these things that weren't honorable, right? So they had to do sacrifices, they had to do stoning, they had to put this cloth around, like on the corners of their whatever. They had to make sure that they didn't mix wool with linen, and they had to make sure that the women were literally covered with these whatever, so many different things. But then you see prophecy in Isaiah 42 verse 21 that God is well pleased to magnify the law and make it honorable again. And so how did how did this happen? Well, you see in Daniel 9 verse 27 that there's this Messiah that's going to come, and he's going to cause to cease the sacrifices and the oblation and whatnot. And then you see in Deuteronomy 18 that there's going to be this capital P prophet that was going to basically proclaim everything that was desired at Horeb. And what they really desired at Horeb, you see in 1 Corinthians 10, is this spiritual water that came out of the spiritual rock, that rock representing that same Messiah, right? And the spiritual water that came out of Horeb, you see in Deuteronomy 5 verse 2, is that same covenant, the Ten Commandments. And so you can see like throughout like scripture, right, Isaiah 28 verse 12, right, there's going to be this refreshing, but that people won't hear. Even it says, this is the rest where you may rest, right? The Sabbath rest. This is the refreshing, yet they would not hear. And so what you have people today, they don't hear anything about this refreshing, right? This basically renewing of like this covenant that was given at Horeb. And that's even what Paul is addressing, right? He's saying that this law, it couldn't disannul this covenant. And so then this Messiah came, and he was prophesied to come, and he was going to end this law that was added because we transgressed, like our forefathers transgressed. And then we would be able to go back on how God originally desired it to be, where we just kept the Ten Commandments. So then we could again be, as Peter puts in one of his epistles, a royal priesthood, a holy diadem, or mixing up words, but and that's what we're allowed to be. And that's what Yeshua did, right on the cross. He said in John 19, verse 30, "It is finished," quoting Deuteronomy 31, verse 24, because Moses was writing all these words, right, in the book of the law, because God wrote the Ten Commandments by his finger in tables and stone, but Moses wrote the sacrificial law in the book of the law. And so he was writing that, and then it was like kind of written like that this was going to be like in place until it is finished. And Yeshua said, "It is finished," quoting that. And so now we live in that time where the sacrificial law is finished. And so that's why Yeshua, when he met that adulterous woman, he was like, "I'm not going to stone you, but I'm going to rebuke you, right? Tell you to sin no more." And so this is how the law was magnified. And so this is what it means to love your neighbor as yourself. Rebuking sin. You see it in Leviticus 19, which James is all talking about, right in James chapter 2, like talking all about Leviticus 19, 15 through 18. And that's how you, instead of stoning and stuff, you rebuke to make sure that people keep the Ten Commandments so that they don't transgress. So that that law is made honorable. And yeah, so then everybody is obeying God, right? Obeying his voice, keeping his covenant.